Greetings, welcome. We appreciate you joining us today. My name is Amy Shaiman, and we are very excited to have such a great group watching us today, including Miami faculty, staff, parents, students, and Miami alumni ranging from the class of 1954 to the class of 2020. Thanks to those who submitted questions ahead of time. We also invite your participation with us live right now. To ask a question or make a comment, simply click the Ask a Question link that is just below the video, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can today. Also, you are welcome to share your memories with us. You can use the Ask a Question button, just like for a question, and tell us about how Hillel or the Jewish community was a part of your Miami experience, or the role that food plays for you today or during your Miami time. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you to the Miami University Alumni Association for hosting us today. I'm so excited to be here today. As I said a moment ago, my name is Amy Shaiman. You might remember me from Hillel days as Amy Greenbaum, which was my maiden name. I was part of the class in 1991, and now I'm back in Oxford working for Miami in our advancement division, and I'm also involved in a lot of things in the local community. I want to begin today by sharing with you the university's statement about our Miami heritage, which acknowledges our past. Miami University is located within the traditional homelands of the Miamia and Shawnee people, who, along with other indigenous groups, ceded these lands to the United States in the first Treaty of Greenville in 1795. The Miami people, whose name our university carries, were forcibly removed from these homelands in 1846. In 1972, a relationship between Miami University and the Miami tribe of Oklahoma began and then evolved into a reciprocal partnership, including the creation of the Miamia Center at Miami University in 2001. The work of that center serves the Miami tribe community and is dedicated to the revitalization of Miami language and culture, and to restoring the knowledge to the Miamia people. The Miami University and Miami Tribe are proud of this work and of the more than 140 Miamia students who have attended the university since 1991 through the Miamia Heritage Award Program. I'd now like to introduce our guests today. Whitney Fisch received her master's degree in social work from the University of Michigan and spent the last 6 years as a director of health and wellness at the Millikan Community School in LA. Before her time in Los Angeles, California, Whitney was a middle school counselor at Sheck Hillel Community Day School in North Miami Beach. Currently, Whitney is the executive director of the Hillel here at Miami. Welcome, Whitney. And when not dealing with the holy work of running the Hillel in Southwest Ohio, Whitney is at home dealing with the trials and tribulations of her 3 young children, as well as cooking a lot. She blogs about all things food and life on her blog, Jew Hungry. Jew Hungry was a top 5 finalist in 2013 for the Kitchen's Homie Awards for Best Health and Diet Blog in 2014. Whitney co-authored a Passover e-cookbook that same year with fellow Jewish food bloggers Amy Kreitzer, Sarah Lasry, and Liz Rubin, called 4 Bloggers Dish: Passover Modern Twists on Traditional Recipes. Whitney contributed recipes and blog posts to interfaithfamily.com, the Huffington Post, and the Nosher. You can follow Whitney's adventures in food and family on Instagram at Jew Hungry, or learn more about health and wellness tips and tools on her teen advocacy Instagram account at Whitney Fisch MSW, and that's Fisch. I'd like to now introduce you to Susan. Susan Barocas is a writer, chef, and cooking instructor with a passion for healthy cooking and Jewish history and food, especially Sephardic cuisines, cultures, and history. She served as the guest chef for the 2014, 15, and 16 Passover Seders in the Obama White House. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, Huffington Post, Lilith, Moment, and online with the Nosher, among other outlets. After many years as a documentary filmmaker and serving as the director of the Washington Jewish Film Festival, in 2012, she became the founding director of the Jewish Food Experience. At the time, an innovative project of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington, JFE, or Jewish Food Experience, and its award-winning website led the way for organizations to use food to build Jewish identity and community. Susan is a member of the International Association of Culinary Professionals, Les Dames d'Escoffier, Women's Culinary Society, and the task force of the Jewish Mindfulness Center of Washington at Addis Israel Congregation, where she also co-chairs the Chesed, or Loving Kindness, Cooking Committee. She is currently at work on a long-awaited cookbook. Susan is the mother of Sam Phillips, who is a 2018 Miami alum from the College of Arts and Science. So thank you to Whitney and Susan. We're so thrilled to have you here with us today and to talk about food. You know, I think it's great how in society now, what used to just be energy to keep us going throughout the day has really turned into cultural conversations and memories that we tie into. I remember so well the first Hillel that I was a young student from Minnesota walking into Hillel, and I knew not a soul. And it was Shabbat, so some of the things there were familiar to me, but most of it I just was fighting through my nervousness and my fear about what it would be like. But the moment that I ate some challah, had some fruit juice, tasted like home, and it was familiar, and thus began a way to have a home away from home. That Hillel was very much for me when I was at Miami. Whitney, can you tell us a little bit about what's happening at Hillel now?
Yeah, so certainly, like most organizations, certainly on college campuses, we've had to shift and pivot, which, you know, if you work for any kind of nonprofit that's student focused, shifting and pivoting is part of the job anyway. So we've moved entirely virtual. We didn't have the ability to open the building and really financially afford what it takes to open a building in COVID. And truthfully, if we can't keep students and staff healthy and well and safe, we can't do any of it. So we did have to make that decision early on, but that's okay because we have an incredibly strong student internship program and wonderful staff. And so we've actually had cooking program, like we had a cook-off with Hunter Hillel, and we had celebrity chefs Adina Sussman, who is Chrissy Teigen's ghostwriter and recipe developer for her cookbooks. And we had the incredible Jake Cohen as our celebrity chefs who met with our students and judged it. And it just is forcing us to be creative. Last week, we delivered or had 25 students come and pick up Shabbat boxes to go, where they got, it was Israel themed. So they got hummus and pitot and all sorts of different freebies. And we've had workshops on anti-Semitism and social media. And we've had, we're still having coffees with students. Sometimes those are on Zoom and we send a gift card for a coffee for Kofenia, or sometimes it's actually at Kofenia and just safe. So we are moving forward, not forgetting what we're here to do. And what we're here to do is to make sure that there's a space for Jewish students in Oxford to grow, to be, to learn, to feel safe, to feel comfortable. So we're still doing it. Oh, Amy, I think you're muted.
Oh, I missed my unmute button. Thank you, Whitney.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it in every meeting, right?
Exactly right. It's not a COVID meeting.
So it's great to hear how, you know, the pivot is meeting students where they are and helping them stay connected, and we have students that come from so many different parts of the country, and students who are from DC and students who are from the West Coast and everywhere in between, and internationally, of course. So having them have the ability to stay connected like that is so important and so valuable. And so, Susan, have you seen ways that people are innovating through food, either at Addis Israel where you're involved, or as you see the Jewish food experience, come into a resource. I know it's one of the websites, even before I had the pleasure of knowing you, when your son was a student here, it was a place I would go get recipes when I was looking for what to cook for a given day. But how are you seeing it on the food side where you are, of how people are using food to stay connected during this challenging time?
Well, I think all of us know about the baking that's been going on, and I have never seen so many challahs posted before. There are so many, and of course sourdough challahs, etc. But what I'm seeing is a real innovation. There was a story, I think it was yesterday or the day before, on Feller, and it was about pop-up Jewish food happening in this country that's different, and it's happening because restaurants are having a hard time staying in business, and it's a way for restaurateurs and chefs to keep business going. But it's also just this time, a silver lining, if there is such a thing to this time, is that it's really sparked a lot of creativity. And one of those places is the food world, where people are at home, or if they're professional in a pop-up or in all kinds of ways, really getting more creative. And I see what people are cooking at home, people who aren't food professionals, and it's just wonderful. And they're looking for ways to connect. They're looking for ways to also to connect to their Jewishness, to connect to Shabbat or holidays or their ancestors, wherever they may be from. So I think that there's just a lot of creativity and sparking happening right now.
That's great. You mentioned ancestors, and I think with coming up on Thanksgiving, and I know a number of people said to me, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, well, some of us did quarantine with Passover and all these other holidays. I've actually been sharing tips with people on, you could do this, take a breath. And the food is so tied into all these holidays, and food is so very, very tied into the essence of the stories we tell of Thanksgiving. Can you talk about, I know the recipe you're going to make for us today is one that ties to your family's ancestry, right, and one that goes back even farther than the Thanksgiving story in terms of time. So can you tell us a little bit about that recipe and perhaps why you chose it, what the story of that recipe is to you?
Well, I chose this recipe, which is made with chickpeas and seasonings that are very much of the Sephardic Jews of Spain, because that's my family history way back. And also because this is a dish that ties back to the first Jews even coming to Iberia. And they came with the Romans. The Romans were really big on using chickpeas, and so were the North Africans. And so you have this convergence in Iberia, in Spain especially, more than in Portugal, of using chickpeas. And I'm actually going to do a little cooking while we talk. I have sauteed some onions so that they're all soft but not brown. It's been about 15 minutes. And I'm going to add some spices as I talk, and I'll tell you about it. But this chickpeas became very, very important. First, because they're paro, and they could be made with any meal, dairy, meat, whatever. Also, because the history of the Jews of Spain is much more complicated than what we normally think of. We think, oh, they were thrown out in 1492. Actually, it was up and down for centuries for the Jews in Spain. And there was a first Inquisition in 1613. The early Catholic Church threw the Jews out then, or forced them to convert, and had laws like, if you have a meal with a Jew, you can't get communion. So it was a fraught history. On the other hand, Jews did thrive there when they weren't thriving in other parts of the world, in Europe especially. And this dish actually dates back to the very first Inquisition in the 600s, which was the first time there were secret Jews that became crypto Jews. There became a community, and that community lasted hundreds and hundreds of years. There are people who are descended from those secret Jews, in addition to people who were secret Jews from the Inquisition in the 1400s. So I just want to say we're going to put the recipe up as I understand it, or send it out in the email that goes out post this event. But I have 2 medium onions chopped up, and I just used a red and a white. You can use white, yellow, whatever. It doesn't matter, because one of the important things about cooking is to use what you have and make it your own. I'm adding half a teaspoon of grated fresh ginger and a quarter teaspoon of cloves. Now, cloves are the fact that we're using onion, ginger, and cloves are a hint that this is not a recipe of the Christians in Spain. It is a recipe of the Jews. Jews and Muslims ate chickpeas and onions and all these incredible spices. They were considered lower class foods by the upper class of Spain and usually the Christian community. And so they didn't eat garlic, onions, all of this stuff. And what was so interesting is, if you remember back to the Exodus, what did the Jews crave? The Israelites crave. They craved onions and leeks. You know, they were tired of manna. They wanted some thyme, some seasoning. So here what I've done is I've put these in so that their aroma can release, so that the actual spices can open up a little bit. You cook them just a tad. All right, we've done that. So now we can add, it just takes a minute for that to happen. Now we're going to add a little bit of vinegar. Vinegar, wine vinegar made from old wine left to sit, is very, very important to all of Spanish food. And Jews were known for eating verduras, greens, sprinkled with vinegar. They liked vinegar a lot. And this is pomegranate juice, which also the Jewish community cooked a lot with pomegranate juice. And we're going to just let that cook for a moment. They cooked with a lot of pomegranate juice and pomegranates in stews and soups and in vegetables. They often season vegetables with this. When I make this dish, I have to say, I kind of let my imagination go and try to imagine that, you know, one of my ancestors could have made this dish. They could have stood over, you know, the fire with an iron pan. It's a little different than what I'm doing, making sure their skirts didn't catch on fire. But they could have made this dish and smelled these smells. And I just really love that connection. It does something to me inside, I have to say. And so now this is just going to cook for a moment. And I'm going to show you a trick while it does. Actually, I can add the chickpeas. This is 3 cups of chickpeas. You can use canned. I happen to have made a huge batch of chickpeas recently. So this is homemade. And there is something, the texture is a little bit more, you know, you say al dente in pasta. Well, chickpeas have a nice bite, kind of an al dente bite when you make them yourself. But when I'm in a rush, trust me, I make this dish with canned chickpeas. All right, so that's going to cook for a little bit. And while it does, I'm going to show you, before I do that, we're going to add some honey. This is a real sweet and kind of sour combination of flavors. And pomegranate molasses. I don't know if any of you are familiar with pomegranate molasses, but it is a wonderful ingredient that has a tart sweetness. It has both. And by the way, just a little tip, I sprayed these little cups with a little bit of coconut oil. Anytime you have honey or like this pomegranate molasses, a thick syrupy anything, if you will coat the measuring utensil with just a little bit of oil with your finger or a little spray, it'll come right out, as these just did. You're not wasting anything. When you're making challah, measure the oil in the measuring cup first, and then measure the honey in the same cup, and it'll pour out easily. Okay, so this is...
That's great. I was wondering how it came out so easily. So thank you for that tip.
Another tip. Okay, I was doing this last night to get the pomegranates ready, and I realized I should show you all about, if any of you don't know about spanking the pomegranate, you know, there's all these different ways that you can release pomegranate seeds. My favorite is this because it is so fast, and all you do is cut the pomegranate around the circumference in half, and I have a bowl with half the seeds already. And what I'm going to do is you take a wooden spoon, very important that it's a wooden spoon, and you go all around the edges and literally just tap it, and you can see all the seeds are already falling out. If you do it here, less falls out. You want to do it around the edges, and you just keep tapping it. And I mean, it's quite amazing how quickly this happens. I'm a pomegranate fanatic. I don't know if you can see back in the rear of my counter, there's 2 huge pomegranates there. During pomegranate season, I very often at night will do this as a snack where I'll eat all the seeds from a whole pomegranate. But I figure it's healthier than a lot of other things.
Sure, and I could see that. I could see kids loving to do that. I know I try to cook with my 7-year-old, and Whitney, I imagine you cook with your 3, and I could see kids loving to get to smack the back of the pomegranate.
They love it.
Our kids are obsessed with pomegranates, and coming from LA, we were immersed in the Persian Jewish community, which was incredible. Like, what a culturally rich community, and everything. That's the only reason I know about pomegranate molasses, and that's the only reason I know. I was taught the trick from a Persian colleague that you cut the pomegranate in half, and if you submerge it in water, and then just like scoop them out with your hands, then they come out easily, and then you don't have the white little like residue from, I don't know what you would call that, the skin. So they can really get into that. So we cut it in half, give them a bowl of water, and they just like dig it out, and it's perfect.
Say why I don't do that, because I know that's a great method. I want the juice.
Okay.
You can't capture the pomegranate juice, and there's pomegranate juice on the bottom of the bowl. And you can't capture it if you do that method. Also, I just want to show you, I haven't picked anything out except one piece. There's hardly any pith comes out with that. And if it does, it's very easy because it'll come out in a fairly big piece. So I'm just going to add a little salt.
It must be so therapeutic to just beat on something.
Cooking is therapeutic anyway, as we know. The other thing about cooking during this time is it's really good therapy. And getting in the kitchen with kids, that's actually one of the things. Before Passover, I was writing a story for the Washington Post about Passover. And it was a story about how to make everyone at your Passover table happy. So 2 days before the story was due, which on March, I think it was the 16th maybe, I looked up from my computer and said, oh my God, I'm writing the wrong story. We have a pandemic. No one's going to be getting together in, a few weeks from now. So I literally rewrote the story that to say, cook together with whoever's in your house, cook on Zoom together, share recipes, all of these ideas. You could take, we Jews have been through now Passover and the high holidays and Sukkot. We know how to do this. So we can give advice to the rest of the world that you can have good holidays and create new ways of doing it. And so sharing recipes, cooking together, whoever's with you or on Zoom, and eating some of the same foods as you Zoom together, it does. It's not what we want, but it is a good solution for the time. So just want to say this is done, except for adding our lovely pomegranates and juice. And this is the dish. It's so simple. And if you ever want to make it, it's great over rice or over quinoa or grains. It's great by itself. You can add extra pomegranate juice if you want to make more sauce than what I have here. And I'm going to hold it up and show you all what it looks like, because it is a very pretty dish, considering it's just chickpeas. All right, so here you can see the beautiful colors.
That looks amazing. Oh my gosh, Susan.
Delicious. I wish I could smell it.
It's done.
Now, when I make chickpeas, I tend to make them dairy because for me, feta and chickpea and tomato with cilantro is like, it does things to me. Like it's so good. Like that's my favorite thing in the world.
Actually, I do that a lot too. I like that combination as well. I just like chickpeas, however.
Yes.
And so when I came across this recipe, which is adapted from a book called The Drizzle of Honey, the recipes of the Conversos. The Secret Jews of Spain. Recipes from the Secret Jews.
Amazing.
The Drizzle of Honey. Wonderful, wonderful cookbook. by two people who aren't Jewish out of Rhode Island. They did a whole lot of scholarly research and just fabulous. And this, they traced back to one woman's recipe. And the reason they can do that is because the way that we know about the food from the Jews of Spain is through Inquisition testimony, almost 100%, except for the fact of what people carried with them. So when all the women took their recipes with them and started to make them and adapt them to where they were living after they left Spain, then you have recipes that were saved through that way. Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing, amazing, amazing. It's amazing how culture and tradition can endure. Like, it's just so inspiring.
Absolutely. And so many people who passed on culture and tradition without necessarily knowing the why. Right? So families that lit candles inside of a box on Fridays, or I was reading a story of a woman whose family always separated when they would crack an egg into a recipe, they didn't just crack it into the recipe. They cracked it into a glass bowl. So for those who aren't familiar with the custom, those of us who keep kosher, you check your egg for a blood spot. And so to do that, you don't want to obviously put it in the recipe and then go, uh-oh. So you crack into a bowl. Although I've fished plenty of other things of egg out of the recipe when I've gone, uh-oh. But for those who keep kosher, you put it into another container first, even if you're not going to beat it. So, she never knew why her family did that until something spurred her to do some research. This is a woman whose family was Cuban. And at any rate, such amazing things. So Susan, I wanted to ask you this recipe, and Whitney, your comment about making chickpeas dairy. We're also, I like chickpeas too, and eat them and have made them in all kinds of different recipes. But this could be a vegan dish or vegetarian dish for people who don't know what to do for a vegetarian at their table. If they have a college kid coming home who's a new vegetarian, perhaps. I know I've been a vegetarian for almost 30 years, and sometimes, especially a long time ago. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's one of the reasons I love eating at your house, because I've been vegetarian for about 45 years.
Yeah, so we'll tell that story in a second. But people often struggle with, what do I do other than give a vegetarian a salad? I think there's a lot more exposure than there used to be, but it depends on how much people are meat-based in their cooking. So I want to tell this quick story of how Susan and I met, besides the fact that Miami is in this little town and we eventually often run into each other. But Hillel has had, when we've done Parents Weekend in person, which obviously wasn't your experience this year, Whitney, it has local Jewish community members will host parents who come for Parents Weekend. Ends up being a nice fundraiser for Hillel, because the idea is the parent donates the equivalent of a hotel cost to Hillel for each night, and they get home hospitality and don't have to drive to Cincinnati or Dayton to have a hotel room, since the hotel rooms in Oxford get filled very, very quickly. So that's how Susan and I met. No idea of the food connection, other than she had a first-year student at Miami when this happened, and then she started staying with us other times too, which we have other families who've done that as well. So I want to take a second and share a couple of memories that have come in on the website. Again, if you have a memory to share or want to ask a question, you can use the Ask a Question button that's just below the video. So Bill Levinson, who was a student at my time at Miami, who knows Susan through life in DC, again, there's convergence. I love Jewish geography. Said he wants to say hello to Amy and to Susan. He tells that story I just did. And he says he has many food memories from his time at Miami. He graduated in 1992 and is very pleased to see both me and Susan on this program. And also a memory to share from Iris Brooks, Lewin. I apologize, Iris, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. And her mom's maiden name was my maiden name. I'll have to go down Jewish geography land and see if there's a connection there. But she was a Miami student, 1993, 1997, and was an admission counselor 97 to 99. And she writes that Hillel was her home away from home. Friday night dinners, Shabbat services, seders, and breakfasts were such an enormous part of her Miami experience. The majority of friends she keeps in touch with from Miami are fellow Hillel members. So thank you, Bill and Iris, for sharing those memories with us and contributing to the conversation.
I just wanted to also respond to a question from someone who registered who said, do you have any tips for good challah? So yeah, good recipe to start with, obviously. Patience, because a lot of people try to rush the rise, and you can't do that. I have a single rise challah, but most challahs have to rise at least twice. And the other thing is something that I discovered because I didn't make challah growing up, so I started making it once my son was born, and they were always a little dense. And I figured out what I was doing. Well, I wasn't kneading it enough. You really have to knead that dough 10, 12, 14 minutes, initial knead, until you get this, like everyone says, it's like a baby's bottom. Well, in a way it is. It gets very right, Whitney, you know, right?
I just learned, I mean, it took me years, but I finally realized, actually from emailing Jake Cohen and saying like, dude, how do you get our dough so shiny and pretty? He's like, knead it longer than you think.
Right.
Like, but I'm always scared I'm gonna he's like, there's no such thing. You're not gonna over knead your challah dough. It's not gonna happen. And I will say that when I started using bread flour, that also made a huge difference direction for my own challah. I think that there is something with the high gluten, insert really smart words here that I don't know, but something about the difference between the proteins and the higher protein count in bread flour versus all-purpose flour for a better, fluffier challah.
Yeah, I think, you know, I go back and forth with whatever I have in the house, to be honest. And we make a lot of challah at the, when we can gather together for the Hesed Cooking Committee. In our freezer, we always had 10, 20, 30 challahs that people could come and take to Shiva homes for people who are sick. And we sometimes would just use regular all-purpose flour, but the kneading activates the gluten in that flour too. So if you're using all-purpose instead of bread flour, you want to knead even more.
So Susan, this is a question for you. So have you ever watched, I'm like a self-taught cook. I do not have the expertise that Susan does. I think that I just could talk to a wall, and maybe that's why I have a following on Instagram, but I am certainly not as intellectually and educated in food as Susan. So this is my question for you. So we as a family, when Shabbat ends early, like it does now, we watch the British baking show. Okay. Okay. So every time when they're doing bread, they're holding it up and they're looking for what do you know? What is that? Do you know what they're?
No. Oh, you mean after it's cooked and they have a slice of it?
No, when they're kneading the dough and they're looking for like a stretch something or other in their protein.
In a bread dough.
In a bread dough.
Huh. I do not know.
Someone out who's watching knows.
No one I know does that. So I don't know. I'm sure there's a scientific reason for it. And it probably has to do exactly with the way the proteins break down, or, you know, the gluten breaks down. I don't know.
Okay, so we'll have to Google it. I'm just gonna have to Google.
Yeah, we're gonna have to rely on Master Google. But I have to say also, Whitney, that I'm a home cook. I mean, I'm not professionally trained, so all of this I taught myself, and I learned from people like you and Adina and Liz and all these people who are wonderful people to follow and learn from. I've just been cooking since I was 5 years old. And
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Cookbook when I was 7.
That's incredible. Yeah. I brought my kids into the kitchen starting at 2, and now my 8-year-old, early pandemic, before we moved, every Monday night was Monday night Siona night, so she got to make dinner. So she would tell us what she wanted to make. I'd make sure, like ahead of time, I'd make sure we would go get the ingredients. She would often make, I don't know, do you know the chef Danielle Oron? She's a Canadian Israeli. Yeah, she's incredible. I really like her work. She has this incredible blog called I Will Not Eat Oysters. So she's not kosher, but she is certainly Israeli and has an Israeli and Jewish lens to her food. But her food is amazing, and it's really user friendly. So really just like connected with that. And I got her safe knives, and she's at a place now at 8 years old where she now for lunch during the day, because she's doing virtual school, she makes her own lunch, right? Like she's making lunch and she's taking ownership over parts of Shabbat dinner. It's helpful for me, but also it's just, I wonder where I would be if I had that access food-wise at such an early age, right?
Right.
Because I did not cooking until I lived in Jerusalem in 2008, the summer before I went to Pardes for the year. And I just happened to live off of Usishkin. And yes, and I was like a stone's throw from the shuk, and I had nothing to do. So I would like go to the shuk and teach myself, buy fresh ingredients and try to teach myself how to cook.
Yeah, the shuk that Whitney's referring to for people who haven't experienced in Jerusalem is in the modern city, and it's a shuk that is ever changing. When I lived in Israel almost 30 years ago, most of it was still open air. Much more of it is closed in now, and there's a lot more restaurants in it that there used to be. But oh my gosh, the people who bring their fruits and their vegetables and their hummus, and my friends and I, my housemates and I, ate our way very intentionally from street here to street there our first 2 months to figure out whose hummus did we like the best, whose challah did we like the best, and but oh my gosh, there's a couple places there that I still could taste their rugelach and their challah and their hummus, and that had to be such a fun neighborhood to be in. So how we connect. I'm sorry, go ahead, Susan, and then I want to share a couple comments.
Like so many so many fresh markets, it's so important to realize how the ingredients are different. They're fresher, you just pick. And so, like, I'm a big proponent of shopping from local farms and farmers and really trying to get our food to be seasonal and local. And you have a farmer's market, in Oxford.
So not only do we have a farmer's market, Miami itself has what's called the Institute for Food. It is a local community source agriculture, or CSA. My family and I have been subscribers of it for a while, and they have students and community members who do work hours for their food. And Whitney, I bet they would do something with Hillel. You could do something distanced in the spring. And because they do
always programming. Yeah. I love it, Amy.
There's the CSA year goes May to our last pickup is at the farm. It's usually not at the farm, it's usually on campus, but next Thanksgiving week, it's easy for me to say, to go pick it up at the farm. So, but yeah, it makes such a difference to do it locally. My son just asked me, he said, "Can I go get strawberries at the farmer's market this week?" I said, "Nope."
Yeah.
I said, "You can only buy those from Kroger, and they're shipped all the way from California, and that." What does that do? We had a whole environmental conversation, but right, food is also educational food, but as we've been talking about, but yeah, there's lots of ways to be connected. We had a comment from we have so many comments now, I've lost where I am in my scroll, but we had a comment, sorry, from Mike, I think it's Radis, I'm very apologetic if I'm mispronouncing your last name, who talks about how he is vegan, and he's the organizer of his congregation's vegan Havurah. How awesome that a congregation in LA has a vegan Havurah. And so Whitney, he's wondering if you could talk about how Miami Hillel works with vegan or vegetarian or other special food needs students to make sure they have what they need.
So right now our kitchen is closed. So most everything by default, if we do any kind of food, is vegan because it's not being refrigerated and it's not being cooked. When we did a high holiday food, which we did, we purchased from a kosher restaurant in Kinneret in Cincinnati. There was a vegan option and there was a meat option. I myself being a kosher keeper since 2008, and just being a social worker, my lens is always inclusivity. We are a pluralistic community, so we can't be all things to all people, but we want to make sure we're being thoughtful and intentional and inclusive. So there's always going to be an option. Can I guarantee it's going to be as good as maybe the meat option? I don't know. But my goal is to get into that kitchen once it's clean, repaired, and like get down and dirty and make sure we're being thoughtful about that. I mean, that the vegetarian isn't tuna, right? Like how many times have you been to some sort of spread, and you're like, do you have any vegetarian options? They're like, well, we have tuna. That's a misunderstanding of what vegetarian is, or that the vegan option, which is often we'll eat out vegetarian and vegan as a family. We made that decision when we decided to keep kosher because my side of the family does not keep kosher. In fact, my dad's not Jewish, and it's really important to me that my kids can sit at a table with their family members and comfortable and be able to eat in the home of their grandmother, right, of their grandfather. So if that's more important, that inclusiveness of family is more important to us than the strict laws of kashrut. But I want to also make sure that vegan is not just a throwaway, that it's not just portobello mushroom and good luck. So we're gonna always be thoughtful and ask for advice from those who do it better.
When you open up again, and I go to visit my son in Cincinnati, I want to come to a vegan Shabbat dinner at
Yes,
Hillel.
let's do it. Love it.
That would be so fun.
Yes.
That is awesome. It's great that Hillel can be there for students no matter what. Yeah. So that's fabulous. And we had someone else, and I think Walter Frank wrote in. Hi, Walter. Nice to see your name, and thank you for all you've done for Hillel about connecting with students through Corona. So maybe if you have another story, you can do that. But Julie Rubin, who is a recently retired faculty member from Miami, I used to babysit her kids who are now in I won't say what decade, but she wrote in responding to your comment on your question, Whitney, on the British baking show.
Yes, Julie.
She says that it's called the window pane test.
Okay.
And that they are looking to see through the dough, and that is supposed to mean that it will support the rise. So so people have
questions, but I'm so grateful. Okay.
Yeah. So
I will Google it. That's really helpful.
So, Susan, we've had multiple people who are asking about your White House experience, and if you might want to share some of the favorite recipes or a little bit of favorite memory or a little bit about that story of how you ended up cooking at the White House for 3 years for Passover.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories around that, as you can imagine, and I still get like goosebumps and go, did that really happen? But, I got there because I went to a dinner in the Jewish community and happened to be seated next to, it was like a really cold, awful November night. I didn't want to go. I did the right thing. I went. Then I got seated next to somebody who was on 2 Blackberries, and I'm thinking, no, we're going to talk. I'm not going to, sit here with you on your Blackberries. It was the outreach coordinator, the Jewish outreach coordinator from the White House. And he found out that I was at the time running Jewish Food Experience. He said, oh my God, I have to write a newsletter. This is literally the Sunday before Thanksgiving, if people remember. He said, I have to send out the president's newsletter and for Thanksgiving to 30,000 Jewish leaders around the country. And I don't know what to do. Do you know anything about Thanksgiving? So it's a food, Jewish food website. I had spent 6 months on Thanksgiving. I'm like, yeah. So I ended up, he asked me if I could write something. I said, sure. When do you need it? This is 9:30 at night. And he said, oh, it's not such a rush. Not till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So I ended up pulling an all-nighter. And this is a great story that I've told to youth groups and stuff, because, you do the right thing. And you put yourself out and you go the extra mile. And some of it is a little bit of luck and timing, but it's also taking advantage of the situations you're in. So I wrote some other newsletters for him, which you can imagine what it's like to have President Obama's message and Susan Barocas' recipes. And I'm like, whoa. And, when it came time for Passover that year, I got a call from Matt, the Jewish outreach coordinator, that said, Mrs. Obama is not happy. It's not a very healthy Seder that we've been doing here at the White House. And she'd like to know if we could have a guest chef. Would you, or maybe someone be willing to do that? Oh. When I could speak again, I said, I could do that. And all inside of me, everything's going, you didn't go to culinary school, you didn't this, you didn't that. And I said, I could do that. And so I did. I went and I did it. And favorite dishes, Moroccan chicken with olives and lemons, which the third year the president did not see. And he's walking around the table saying, where's that chicken dish I like? And I'm like, oh my God. And also just having Mrs. Obama thank me for having like green stuff on the table. We added several dishes, and I also was able to add Sephardic food. So we had Moroccan haroset balls in addition to the chicken, and we had the huevos haminados, the very long cooked eggs that I walked in at 9 o'clock in the morning to the kitchen and said, okay, we got to get those hard-boiled eggs cooking. And they just thought, who is this person? She has no idea what she's doing. And I explained to them, and I said, you got any old, peels from your onions and some peppercorns? Anyway, it was, as you can imagine, an amazing experience. Lots of stories, but those are just a couple of the ones that really stand out. And one other thing, the second year that I was there, something really special happened in that I was making gefilte fish, which, by the way, I was so wise that I gave them this really amazing recipe for gefilte fish the second year. The first year, it was not really gefilte fish. Anyway, it was a version of it. And so I gave them a wonderful recipe, and they said, great, you make it. And so I kind of swallowed hard and said, oh, sure. And the truth is, I've never made gefilte fish from scratch before. And so luckily didn't poison anyone, including the president. I was sitting there making it, and I just had this feeling that my parents and grandparents were there with me. I get chills when I even speak of it because it was so clear of a presence, and I really just felt like, hey, you're here with me. And it was a real example. All of my grandparents were immigrants. So my father's first language was Ladino. My grandmother never spoke much English, only Yiddish. So really a real United States of America, diversity. We're here. And everything that
Well, and to end up cooking the meal that we tell our freedom story with, as it's like, yeah, not only must about them with you, but it's like Emma Lazarus's poem, the next steps of giving back and continuing the traditions for others. That's amazing. So thank you for sharing those. I want to share a couple other great feedback that we've gotten. Whitney, I'll give you a second to think. We've had somebody ask about programming during the pandemic. I was reading backwards. So while you're thinking about that, I want to share a memory that Gil and Linda Kessler are sharing. They say, Hillel was our Jewish home while in Oxford. It was a great place to study. Dinner was served every Sunday evening, and a good conversation followed after. Gail writes that he was a student from 1958 to 1962, so the location was different. Our current building was there only in 73, and that Hillel was the first organization that Gail joined when he arrived on campus, and that Gail and Linda are a Miami merger. We're thrilled that you're joining us today and that you're still connected. So
that's so lovely. So the earlier question was, how are we doing programming during the pandemic? It's virtual, and it is in person when the weather was able to, with 10 people, masks only, and outdoors. Again, the building is closed because we couldn't afford the COVID cleaning. So I would say in general, though, virtual or not, the programming, the modality and how we're programming and how we're thinking about programming is people first, not program first. So meaning that we are providing programs based on the need of the student, not on what we as the institution think the student needs. So we're providing information, learning opportunities on anti-Semitism and social media, on processing post-election, any kind of feeling you might have had. Always Shabbat. We are always, as a Jewish organization, going to be present for Shabbat. It's virtual and it's Zoom, but it's there. So we did this cook-off with Adina and Jake, and it was with Hunter Hillel. So we're trying to also have fun, but we had students in their apartments cooking, doing a cooking challenge as if it was Top Chef and these incredible celebrated chefs. And it's just, how are we being creative, and rather than letting this be a setback, kind of letting us throw out the roadmap and really just start fresh and just not be shackled to, well, this is the way it's always been. Because now we're starting to realize that Hillel can't be based around a building. Hillel is the feeling, it's the people. And so it's wherever we are. It does not have to be building dependent. And that's the gift that we're able to find in this pandemic.
That's great. How can people who want to stay connected to Hillel give us some links?
Yes.
We'll also, by the way, make sure we include these in the follow-up email that will come tomorrow, and that will be in the text with the webinar for those of you who are watching the recording. Thanks for watching. But tell us, Whitney, how people can stay connected if they want to see what's happening.
So we have a very active Instagram page. So we have this amazing marketing intern named Jessica Cantor. She is really keeping us alive. That's a great place if you are a parent, if you're an alum and you want to see what we're doing. I remember I told you what the address is beforehand, but I think it's Hillel at literally the word at MU versus the Facebook page, which is Hillel MU. But you can always find us Hillel Miami University when you search us. We are very active on Instagram, on Facebook, especially if you're a parent. We have a weekly email that we redesigned. We would love to feature Miami merger stories. We would love to feature your kids, your alum stories, your magical moments. We are also about to launch a brand new website in about 6 to 8 weeks. So I'm going to hold that information for now, but just get excited. We have rebuilt our LinkedIn page so that we can start really engaging with our alumni and helping current students meet with alumni and build a mentorship. And then we can also, you can also email me. So, excuse my 8-year-old that just ran in the background. So if communication is not an issue, we are alive, we are well, and we are active.
That's great. So just to repeat a couple of those that I had written down, Whitney F for your email, which I don't think you had a chance to say, Whitney F at muhillel.org, which is WHITNEYF as in fish at MU or Frisch, if I want to be more correctly specific to your last name, at muhillel.org, and the Instagram was Hillel HILLELATMU. So Hillel at MU. Susan, we had. Is there a place that people should find you? And while you're prepping to say that, 2 things. People are wondering if you can include your one rice challah recipe when you send JJ. Thank you, JJ, for the organizing for today. When you send the other recipe, and Stephanie has written in. She also wrote in the same answer, Whitney, to your question about the British baking show, and she's also written in to ask you what you sprinkled on top of the dish. So how we can find you and what you sprinkled on top, please.
Okay, so first the dish. It's just some parsley. You can do parsley or cilantro, or not at all if you don't like either of those. But I just like the colors, and it adds a little bit of another layer of texture. And as far as where to find me, I'm in the process of creating a website finally. I just came to food, 8 years ago, and then I had the Jewish Food Experience website, so I'm still catching up. And right now you can find me, I'm at Susan Barocas, all one word, on Instagram, and then just my name, Susan Barocas, for Facebook. And I would love to, have people find out. I post a lot about different kinds of foods, but especially Sephardic food, and I, would be very happy to welcome people to follow me. What else? Did I answer all of it?
Yes, you did. You answered all of those. And I really appreciate everyone who has asked a question today. So as we have about 5 minutes left, but as we think about, this year that we're grateful for, even in this challenge, right? In terms of finding the silver lining, I think, as Susan, you had said before, what are the two of you thinking about in terms of Thanksgiving and what you're doing that might be an existing family tradition that you'll pull in a different way with different people around the table, or what's a new thing that you're going to try with your family?
You want to go, Whitney?
So I'm Southern, and I was raised not kosher and entirely on dairy, and really not unlike the Midwest, casseroles. So when we started keeping kosher, we did a traditional Shabbat, meat Shabbat with turkey. But last year, I kind of made a pronouncement, and I said, no more. On Thursday night, on Thanksgiving, we shall only have dairy foods. So now it is casseroles, it's mac and cheese, it is green bean salad with actual dairy, it's desserts with actual dairy, it's funeral potatoes. I don't know if you know what funeral potatoes are, but there's like a very Southern casserole. It's really just like potatoes, cheese, cornflakes on top. So yes, will it stop my heart? Maybe one day, I don't know. But it's really yummy. And then, of course, Friday is Shabbat. So that's when we have a turkey. So we are now, this is like, that's it, tradition made, Thursday, and mashed potatoes with like actual whipping cream and butter. Like, you just can't get it. I make really good parved mashed potatoes, but there's nothing like a dairy mashed potato. So dairy on Thursday night, Thanksgiving, and then Friday night's the actual turkey.
Wow. So I'll be doing Thanksgiving on my own. And I think, I grew up with the dish. There were two dishes. So I grew up in the 50s and 60s. So one was green bean casserole with cream of mushroom soup and onions on. I do love it. I don't make it anymore. I do make green beans. And what I do is I saute a bunch of mushrooms and garlic and put some nuts. And that's my new green bean. And the other was, of course, the canned yams, right, in the baking dish with extra brown sugar because there's not enough in the syrup from the yams, and cinnamon, and then you get that all hot and you put the marshmallows on, right?
Marshmallows, of course, right.
So I reinvented that this year, and I basically take and roast the sweet potato, cut it in half, and just take and smear like a bunch of Greek yogurt or labneh on the top of it, and then pile on some whatever kind of cranberry sauce you're using, pile it on the top. And it's a really yummy, yummy way to eat it. And I have a vegan friend, she's gonna do it with a non-dairy yogurt, so you can veganize it if you'd like. And I don't eat turkey. I'm vegetarian, pescatarian now, but long time. So I'm just going to be really focusing. I'm going to do some Brussels sprouts because I love them. And I'm just trying to decide if I'm going to shave them and saute them and make them all crispy, or roast them and do like a tahini pomegranate drizzle. I haven't decided.
Well, it makes me want to wish that I could invite myself to be a guest at both your tables, but one day in the future, right?
Please, Amy. I would love, it would be such a delight. We would love to have your family.
Oh, well, we would love to have yours. And we will all do this together. We will not be in isolation forever. So I really want to thank both of you so much for being here and for this conversation. I feel like we could keep talking for hours, and fun, all the connections we found. Thank you to everyone who's watching. Thanks for everyone who shared memories and questions. I apologize if we didn't get to every single one of them, but we have your email addresses, so we'll respond via email. And we really wish everyone a great day, and please watch your email for a couple of recipes that'll come tomorrow or come back on the website. And for those of you who are watching the recording, they should be on the website here with the recording. We hope that you and your family have a great day and a good Thanksgiving. And thank you both, Susan and Whitney.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was great.
Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.